Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalized keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewelry, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF62 7EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewelry Workshops. Vale Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or even phone them at 07789 794248. Hey everyone, my name is Rhys Deans of the Creative Space podcast. I hope you guys are keeping well. And on today's podcast episode, I have none other than the author of Act of Love, Cold in July, and the Hap Collins and Leonard Price series. He is none other than Joe Lansdale. Joe and I sit down to talk about all his crime books, his western books and horror books. The man is an absolute gentleman. He was funny, he was engaging. It was such a fun podcast to do. And I wish him nothing but the best because he's got a new Collins and Price book coming out soon. But without further ado, let's get on to it. It's me and Joe Lansdale on Creative Space Podcast. On this computer. Here we go. No, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Quite a few people have asked me to bring you onto the show, and I have to say, I mean, the first question I'm going to ask is, where do you find the time to write? I know it's a profession, but where do you find it?
I just write in the mornings 3 hours a day. That's all I do, but I do it just about every day. And so for me, that takes care of it. I don't do multiple drafts. I'm slow about when I work, but I try to get 3 to 5 pages a day, and sometimes I'll get 7, 10, even 15. That happens. But I go over it and over it within that 3 hours, and I rarely ever take more than that 3 hours. Usually it takes less. And I think it's just because I'm steady. And I've been doing that method for a long, long time. And that way I don't get bored with it. I don't get worn out with it. I put that 3 hours in, I get up in the morning, I'm ready to go. And when I get that done, I'm through for the day. And then when I go to bed, I guess I work it out in my subconscious, and I get up the next morning. And I'm a big believer in the subconscious as a way to write. And it gives me time to do everything else I want to do. So, 3 hours a day is not bad. That doesn't add up to a whole lot every week. What is that? 21 hours a week?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I mean,
and I usually write a novel in about 3 to 6 months,
what is the time schedule like for you? Well, what time do you get up in the morning and start then?
I don't have a set time, just when I get up, but it's usually around 7:30, sometimes a little earlier. rarely later, and I take the dog out, make coffee, eat breakfast, go up and start riding. So
Oh,
by
that's
8 o'clock, so I'm pretty well done by 11, 12 o'clock, because I sometimes don't even go 3 hours.
what dog have you got, if you don't mind me asking?
Pit bull.
You got a pit bull, have you? I got well, funny enough, my mum who's just come to visit. I'm doing this in my grandparents' house at the moment, but my mum's just visited with my little Frenchie, little French bulldog.
Oh, they're cute.
Uh, yeah, they're absolutely cute. She was rescued actually. She was
And two.
yeah, because well, the way mine was rescued, it was during the pandemic, and my mum and dad were they had one too many to drink, and my dad's friend called them up and said, "I've got this French bulldog. Do you want her?" And my dad was like, "Yeah," drunk and say, "Yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, yeah." But the following day, my mum and my dad have completely forgot all about it, and there was a knock on the door. But if if a look could break your heart, it was this little French bulldog, skin and bone, completely terrified. And what had happened was my dad's friend didn't rescue her from dogs like all the rescue places here. It was actually he went to the breeding farm and just basically stole the dog.
Yeah.
And every time my dad, even to this day, could be a nice book about it one day, but he's like to this day says, if I ever find that breed farmer, I'm gonna kick his ass. I'm gonna kick his
I'm the
head in.
same way. I feel the
Yeah.
same way. I got this pit from a nice place called the Love Pit in Dallas, but the previous pit we found and they were starved to death and mistreated, and that owner, man, terrible people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We all of our dogs have been rescues, I think, but one dog, and we rescue dogs, and of course this at my age and this pit bull, he's about 3. This may be my last dog because I don't want my dog to outlive me. I want to be sure he's taken care of.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I just heard my mother now telling me goodbye, but I can't really answer. But there we go. I'll probably drop her a message in a moment. But
That's
yeah, that's the thing. I'm a lover of bulldogs. I don't know why. I know like not just French bulldogs, but like English bulldogs as well. And even though there's a lot of TLC to come with it with the dogs, I don't know. It's just ever since I was a little kid, I just love bulldogs, and my fiance said to me, "But they're ugly," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get along with it."
Well, I never thought I'd want a pit bull. My friend Andrew Vax always had pit bulls, and he said, "You ever get one, you won't want anything else." I thought, I don't know. And then we rescued that one we found, and he's right. And that's my second one. I don't want anything else. If I ever have
Mm,
another dog, it'll be a pit.
yeah, yeah.
They're the sweetest dogs ever, and
Yeah,
so loyal.
yeah, yeah. And the thing about dogs as well, I mean, I've heard I'll tell you one story. Um my my grandfather, he's one of 8 children, and he's the oldest. He came back from the Merchant Navy just on a break, and he was still living with his mum and dad at the time. But his youngest sibling is my Auntie Donna, and she was only a pup at the time. But they had a dog. I can't remember what the dog was. I think it was a sheep dog. And what happened? There was this man who came around the corner, and my auntie was just playing on the side of the road. Nothing happened. The man didn't look dodgy or anything, but the dog was like, hmm. So the sheepdog leaped over the fence, came around my auntie, and just stood there, growled at the man until the man had to walk across the road around the dog and my auntie, and then carry on his way. And then the
Yeah,
dog licked my auntie and went back to my my grandfather, who was just sat there
yeah. Oh,
going,
the dog knows stuff.
yeah,
Dogs know stuff, or at least they're protective. And
oh
that's the
yeah,
way
very.
mine is. Yeah, he's sweet, but he's protective.
Mm. Going on to talking about your books and everything, what made you want to become a writer? Maybe you've been asked this loads
Well,
of
I've
times.
been
So,
asked a lot, but what happened was that when I was about 4 years old, my brother is 17 years older, and he was pretty much out on his own by the time I was born. And he and his wife, my sister-in-law Mary, came home to visit, and it was probably the first time I had ever seen him and seen my sister-in-law. And she brought comic books, and she would read them to me. And then I was so enraptured with them that I kept wanting her to read them to me. Then I memorized them. And then, and my mother was a big reader. My father couldn't read or write, but my mother was a big reader, and they taught me how to read early. And I just thought, this is what I want to do. I want these, I wasn't thinking in a career sense. I was thinking, I want to tell stories and I want to write comics. Because once I sort of realized the stories were written. And so I started trying to write comics and draw them. And I wasn't a great artist, but I was stories I could do, and I got better at it. And I remember reading Classics Illustrated comics, which helped expand my idea to want to read what those were based on. The Jules Verne, H.G. Wells stories, Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, all of the classic novels and short stories were done in Classics Illustrated. And then I went and found those actual books in the bookmobile, because that's what we had, was a bookmobile at that time. And I would read them. And so the more I read them, the more I kept wanting to write. And then at some point, when I read Edgar Rice Burroughs, I was just hit like a truck. And that's what I wanted to do, was write stories and try to maybe tell science fiction or Burroughs type stories. And I also, from the back, I realized, well, people get paid to do this. If you're good enough, you get paid to do it. So I think that's when I was about 11. I think I realized that I wanted that career. And not only just wanted to do it, I wanted it as a career. Then as time went on, you get influenced by other things. I was influenced by film. I was influenced by, as I said, comics, paintings, all sorts of things, music. All of those things were grist for the mill. And then when I had about 60 hours of college. I didn't get to go regularly. And so I got interested in reading people like Hemingway and Flannery O'Connor and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Faulkner, et cetera, in that vein. And so that taught me something different, and it all just began to kind of mix together. And that's what I did. And when I was 21, I sold my first article, nonfiction article. And by the time I was, I don't know, middle, late 20s, I was selling fiction. And then by the time I was 29, I was a full-time writer, and I've done nothing else since.
When it comes to the times that you published your work, compared to now, would you say it was a lot more easy or difficult back then for you, or would you, and compared to today, or would you say it's a
I
complete
think I
opposite?
think it was easier in the sense you were dealing with publishers and you had a lot of them to deal with. I think the problem now is people just immediately self-publish, and that means they haven't been vetted. That they had what I think what helped was having people tell you no, and then you worked harder to get better. And I see stuff now, and there's some good self-published books. I'm not trying to say there aren't, but most of them are shit. I mean, I get a lot of them and I go, my God, this wouldn't have passed the lowest common denominator in New York. I mean, even if you were selling to the lowest common denominator publisher, it was superior to the stuff that I see, or a large part of it. I'm not telling people, hey, don't publish your book if you want to do it that way, but I really think that that's really hurt the quality of writing. But on the other hand, the lack of markets, I think, has hurt uh, new writers in this period in time. And I think especially the lack of short story markets. There are more markets than there seem to be, I've found out. And I've been fortunate that people just come to me and say, I want this or I want that, because I've been around so long and
Mm.
I've written so much, and I've had a certain amount of success with it. But I wouldn't want to be starting now, to be honest, because I don't think I'd have much fun.
No, no. I mean, for me, I'm more into into playwriting. So I love writing plays,
I've written
and
a
I
couple plays, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Which one to forgive me, obviously, when it comes to as an interviewer, not doing
Well,
research,
I
but
wrote
that's
two one acts, and they were for a Broadway play that was a Grand Guignol,
mm,
and it was me, and I can't remember, may have been Clive Barker. I know it was Neil Barrett Jr. and Dale Close. I can't remember who all of us were involved, but for whatever reason, although I got paid and quite well, the whole thing collapsed. They lost their financing. But there was one of the plays was done in a kind of what I like to call the off Broadway in New York, and I went to see that, and it was great fun to see your work performed. And the other one was performed at some kind of play festival.
mm.
I didn't see that performance. But in fact, one of my plans is to pretty soon is to try to write a couple of two acts.
Oh, that'll be amazing. I look forward to seeing them hopefully one day when
Yeah, I
you
mean,
complete them.
I love plays. And I go to a lot of plays when I have the opportunity. When I'm in London, I gorge on them.
Mm. Oh, it's saying because at the moment, at this moment in time, I don't know when this podcast episode is going to be released, but I'll tell you this now. But in September, I'm one of my plays is going to be performed in London for a couple of days,
Oh,
in
okay.
the London area, and that was my first initial reaction when my friend Mark Jones he said, "Do you fancy do you fancy taking this to London?" And the eyebrows raise up because you think, "Oh, okay, whatever."
Yeah.
But he knew someone, and I think that's the thing as well. You got to know people in order
You
to
do.
get.
I mean, it won't help crap get done, although some crap gets done, obviously. But by knowing people, I always tell people, I say it's always good to meet editors and agents and stuff like that because it makes a difference. If you put a face to it, they're more inclined to look at it, more carefully at what you're
Mm,
doing. And so I do believe that's an important part of it. And going to like World Fantasy Convention or World Horror Convention, and some of those I don't go to as frequently, but there was a time when I went much more because you do meet people, you get in with groups, and otherwise you can be overlooked. And if your work isn't good, nothing's going to happen much anyway. Though I don't always think great work wins out. I think it
yeah.
has the opportunity, and you're at an advantage if you're doing good work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the total answer to success.
Mm,
A lot of things that are published are not that good, but the worst of them are usually better than what people self-publish.
yeah. Did you know, so when you wrote your first novel, which was Act of Love,
Yep.
I looked somewhere there, it was going to be your fourth or fifth uh, work that you actually got published before it was, you said about a couple of short stories and articles and everything.
I actually had a lot of short stories published before that.
Mm,
Uh, and I sold two novels almost within the same week. I sold that one, and I sold a pen name novel, a Western called Texas Night Riders as Ray Slater. And so I had money, and I was able to jump to full time based on that and quit my job, as a janitor. But I actually had probably sold maybe a dozen short stories before that. Just
um,
guessing number, yeah.
yeah. When you wrote Act of Love,
Mhm.
what was the inspiration behind it? Was there like a moment or a newspaper article you were watching something on the
Yeah.
TV?
Yeah, I read an article about crime in Houston, juvenile crime, and my wife was she got a degree in criminology, and she was going to the university at that time and working as well. And some of her textbooks I borrowed and read, and then she wrote a paper on juvenile crime, and I read that, and then that sort of inspired me in crime in general. But my later novel, The Night Runners, was really the one that was inspired by juvenile crime. Act of Love was kind of a pre-serial killer book. It wasn't that no one had ever done serial killer, but it was more graphic. It was a little bit over the top, and it was kind of a template for stuff that came later by a lot of other writers. And
Hmm.
I always felt like it may not have been the absolute first, but it certainly was one that put so many different concepts together in a serial killer novel. And so it's a novel that was my first novel, and it reads like it. But I do think that I did some brave things at that time because it was very graphic,
Hmm.
and I almost didn't sell it for that reason. But when I did, a lot of readers that were younger than I was were influenced by it and became writers. But I just I had read all of that stuff. I was looking for a story. I read a lot of crime fiction and nonfiction. Of course, I always read all kinds of things, horror, what have you. But at that moment in time, I wanted to be a crime writer and probably in the bestseller vein. But after I had written that novel, I just felt like when I was reading a lot of the bestsellers, many of them were great, really good. But I felt, this isn't really me. I'm um, I'm going to be happier being me, and I've got to understand that by being me, I think I'm going to have a really good audience, but I'm not necessarily going to have that bestseller audience. So it's a conscious decision I made because I felt like a lot of the writers I was reading, even writers I like, got to the point where I was reading the same book over and over and over, and I think to some extent, if you've been around a long time, the same themes pop up in your work, same ideas. It's inescapable. But I just did not want to feel like I had to write a book that was just a variation of the one I did a year before.
Mm.
Um, and I remember that being solidified when I was a guest, and I hadn't done much, but I was a guest at a Beaumont, Texas writers conference, and there was a lady in there that was a romance writer, and she had a blackboard, and she was showing all these different ways how you put it together. And they asked who she read. She says, "Well, I don't read anymore." Says, "After I've done all this, I don't have any interest in reading." And I thought, whoa, I don't want that. And I don't want my work to be that mechanical. I don't ever stop and say, have I got to start with this? When does the characterization come in immediately with a character? When how much dialogue, how much, I don't ever consider any of those things. I just say, is this story interesting? Am I giving it my stylistic touches at the best? Am I writing interesting dialogue? How much fun is this for me?
Mm.
I always say I have a motto that I write like everybody I know is dead. That way I'm not writing for anybody else but me. That's selfish, but I'm glad it is. Now, when I'm done, I then hope other people like it. But I just know that I cannot write with somebody looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Agents, editors, friends, relatives, it just that to me is just a hindrance, because the person I got to write for is me, because I'm the only audience I know. Some people I think can pick an audience and understand them. I think Dean Koontz can do that. He's a friend of mine, and I think he has a knack for writing to that audience and knowing what they want. I don't,
Mm.
and partly don't want to, I guess, too. I mean, again, that may be that selfishness of writing a story I want to read without that being part of it. And you that can be a powerful thing and a good thing, and it can be an absolute disaster. But
Mm.
every time I write, I know I'm going out on a limb.
Yeah.
I'm trying something that I think will be interesting.
With because obviously you've written a lot of crime, you've written a lot of westerns and horror novels and everything. What was challenging for you was I know if you the saying is if you're passionate about it, it's not hard because you love it that much and you know it. But whenever you sit down at the computer or a typewriter and you're going to write a crime, horror, or western, which one is more challenging out of those genres?
None of them. They're all the same. It's
Yeah.
just what I want to do at that time. I mean, they're all difficult in their own ways, but not because of the genre itself. Just because trying to write well, whatever you're writing, can be difficult. Writing comes to me fairly easy. I mean, I hate saying that because that tends to make it seem like I'm just slopping it off, which I'm not. But I think it's because I have a storyteller background. I grew up with that, and I read ever since I was a child. So the idea of stories and things come to me fairly easy. Sometimes making it be what I want it to be can be more difficult. But I don't have trouble with ideas, and I don't have trouble starting. I've never had writer's block. I don't even know what the hell that is. And I got to get up. I got to work because I like doing it. I love it. And also I got bills to pay.
Mm.
I think it was Philip K. Dick that may have dedicated one of his books to his debtors. I mean, the people he owed money to. Uh, so I think there's something to that too. You get up and go, well, we've got to put some beans on the table. But that doesn't mean you can't be artistic. I always hate the people that, or I don't write for money. Well, good for you, buddy. I'm glad you don't do that. And I'm glad you've got all the money you need. Me, I write for money, but I write stuff I want to read. So I win both ways. I
Mm.
get paid, and I did something I try to be proud of. You
Yeah.
don't always accomplish what you're trying to do, but you set out to do the best you can. Art is in the eye of the beholder, and a lot of people that claim to be these artists are people that are just lazy. They don't do much work, so they try to think, if it takes me longer, it must be better.
Mm.
Sometimes it is. Some writers are just slow and they're great, but a lot of people are slow and they suck. And a lot of people write fast and they're great. A lot of people write fast and they suck. I
Mm.
mean, it's more of a personal, I guess for me, stories are intuitive, and I write like that. I don't plot, I don't plan them out, I don't make outlines. As soon as I do that, I'm no longer interested in writing.
Yeah. it reminds me of I wanted to know if about your opinion. Because one of my favorite authors, even though I did struggle at first to read some of his books, was Cormac McCarthy.
I don't like
Um,
him at all.
sorry.
I don't like his work at all.
Uh, d-
I like the No Country for Old Men,
yeah,
and
that's what I'm reading now.
and some of the early ones that he wrote, I like pretty well. But I find this, I know I always find him very pretentious, and
Mm,
uh, and I think, why don't you just say what the hell you mean to say? That doesn't mean it can't have an artistic ripple, a depth to it. But and I'm not saying he's not great. I think he's a master at what he does, but I'm talking about just personal impact. His stuff doesn't do anything for me. And
mm,
except No Country for Old Men, I loved. I thought it was fantastic. But there's a point in that even, it's like he all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm writing a great book about a genre. I got to mess with this thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those pretentious things where you want to be you want to do both, which is what I try to do. And we're all pretentious at times. But I
Mm.
mean, I think the whole idea of no quotation marks and me having to
Oh,
figure out who the hell's talking, I just don't have time for that. I want to read, I don't want to contest. And and that doesn't have anything to do with intelligence or depth or whatever. I can read Hemingway and I don't get confused. It's probably one of the greatest writers of certainly the 20th century and still is impacting people now. And the same goes for F. Scott Fitzgerald and Flannery O'Connor and more modern writers, Ray Bradbury. I mean, you name it, Larry McMurtry. But I don't have to guess at what the hell they're doing, you know.
mm.
And
I
some
mean,
people like that part, and I have nothing against that. But for me, no, not my thing.
yeah, I have the same problem, even though I like the author, Stephen King. I feel like I have the same problem because I think he goes into he's too much in depth, if you know what I mean. I'm like, just get to the
I
point.
love Stephen King, but my son feels exactly that way. He said that many times, and I think Stephen's books can be a little longer than they need to be, but I really like his stuff. But that's not an uncommon thing for some people. My son, he always likes the ideas more than he likes all the detail. So,
Mm,
and I like it when King is really dealing with characters. I think I like that better than the horror because for me, horror doesn't work that well in novels. There are exceptions, of course, and Stephen has certainly done a lot of good work. But I think short stories are the perfect measure for horror fiction.
yeah, yeah. What would you say is the perfect horror novel then?
Oh, The Haunting of Hill House would be
Mm,
pretty damn close. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd pick that one. I'm sure there are others that I could think of if I had more time, but I think that would be my perfect pick. You know, um, I think The Shining is another.
mm,
You know? I think Rosemary's Baby. Although the problem is it's what I call a punchline story, and once you know the punchline, uh, the motivation to read it is diminished.
mm,
And I would say the Stepford Wives too. I would say those are all perfect because of the power of the idea and the fact that they're all well written.
mm.
And I'm sure
Moving
if
on.
I said it, I could think of
Yeah.
others.
Oh yeah, exactly. If we had more time to talk, I mean, we would go into more in depth about it. Um, it's amazing to me, how even like Frankenstein and Dracula
Yeah,
in
those are
novel is still relevant to this day.
Yeah, no,
And
I would pick them too. I mean, I would certainly pick Dracula. I like Frankenstein, but I always liked Dracula better. And when I read it, what I realized is that it was such a modern novel. You had they were using recordings and all sorts of stuff that were brand new at that time in which that novel was written. I mean, they're using like they talk into the little roller machine. I forget what those things were called, but it would put your voice on wax, and you could hear it back. And they did diaries. The book is written in so many different forms and angles that it's almost an experimental novel for that period in time. And I admired it for that. And also the first time I read it, especially being young, as it just scared the crap out of me. So to me, that's a good sign of a horror novel. But as I got older, I was less interested in the horror and more interested in the effect, the general effect, the style, the idea, the characters. Ghost Story would be another one that I think is a great novel by Peter
Hmm.
Straub. I think that's also another excellent novel.
Hmm.
And he uses like the voices of Hawthorne and different writers of horror in different sections of that book, which I find interesting.
Going on to because of course, like I said, you've written a lot of books, so I've made a couple of highlights. But I wanted to know about Cold in July, because
Mhm.
obviously it was adapted into a film. But I wanted to know about because again, you said something about it's about fathers and sons,
Yes.
and the journey about a father and a son, etc. So is that because of when you became a father that that
Yeah.
story was going through your head?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't even the story wasn't going through my head, but I had become a father. I was a new father, and there's no manual. I didn't read all those things. Do this and do that because I think that was ridiculous. I don't think it helps at all because every person you're dealing with, little person, is a different personality. And my parents were really good parents, so I felt like I had a good role model, and my wife and I. But you're still saying, am I screwing my kid up? How am I doing? I want to be a good father, but sometimes I don't really want to read the pokey little puppy right then, so on and so on. And when I was thinking about all that stuff, my wife and I went out and looked at a house we were thinking about buying. We didn't buy it, but there was a bullet hole in the ceiling. And I thought, how did that get there? And so I went home that night and I dreamed probably 90% of the novel that night. And I would get it once in a while and wash my face. And I go, damn. And so when I woke up the next morning, the entire novel was in my head. But what's weird is I didn't think about it being a novel. I just thought, what a weird dream. And I told my wife, and she said, Joe, that's your next book. I thought, well, yeah, it is, isn't it? And an editor was coming to visit us in Nacogdoches, and my wife said, tell Greg your story that you dreamed. And I did. And he said, yeah, we'll buy that. And so that's what happened was that all that stuff of thinking about being a father, looking at that house, and probably just a lot of concerns about paying the bills, and because I was starting to do well. I was about 1980s. I went full time 81 about 1986. It was really clicking. And I've never really looked back since then. And generally everything's kind of gone up in as far as career goes. And now you have a few little bumps here and there, but I think I was realizing that I was on a rise, and I really wanted to write a crime novel, and that one popped up, and then it was followed by Savage Season because they bought two books, which became the first Hap and Leonard, though I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was a standalone.
Hmm. When the film came out, or when the film was being made, of course, one of the main actors in it was Sam Shepard, and obviously he's a
Yeah,
writer in himself, a playwright. Did you ever get to meet Sam Shepard, and did you ever
yeah,
talk about writing?
yeah. We both of our works are in the San Marcos Library in Texas, in San Marcos. It's called Texas State is the college, and all of our work is there. Like our manuscripts, I mean, stuff like that, and along with Larry McMurtry and Willie Nelson and quite a few other people. So we talked about that some, and he told me, he said, I've never been able to tell a sustained story like a novel. He said, I don't know how to do that. And he said, yeah, how do you do that? I said, I don't know. Because I didn't know. And I just did it. And he was more of a person who wrote scenes than he wrote, I think, complete stories in the way you commonly think of them. I think of them as like pieces of law, but none of them are short stories in the way people normally think about it. I've written those kind too. I mean, I like all of it, but I don't think that. I think he could think of a scene and a moment and great dialogue about how people talked and all that. And but I don't. I think for some reason he never was able to do a novel, a true novel. I think he wrote something like a novel, but it was really just kind of a collection of scenes. But his scenes, man, they were powerful, and he wrote some really good plays like True Romance. I mean,
Hmm.
True West, and Buried Child are two that I really like. And he wrote a bunch of little one acts that I've read here and there too that I liked. and his experimental stuff I liked. Um, especially when I was younger, because I was much more interested in experimental stuff. I've kind of lost some interest in that as time has gone on, because I'm much more want the story to be the story, and it's not just
Mm.
the gimmick or the idea. But that's fun too. That's fun too.
Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalized keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewelry, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF62 7EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewelry Workshops. Vale Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware, including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valejewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valejewelryworkshops.co.uk, or even phone them at 07789 794248.
Did you ever get emotionally attached to your character that you didn't want he or she to go into one way and you wanted to go into another?
Often.
Must be difficult as well.
Yeah, but the story, I guess you're subconscious, because this, your characters never take over truly. Some part of your brain that has introduced and invented those characters takes over. And like I said, I believe in subconscious writing. And there have been times when I thought, oh man, don't do that. No, got to do it. Got to do it.
It's got to be done. Got to send the kid on the way.
That's right. That's right.
When it do you know what? Moving, just put the book career to one side. Martial artist instructor, and I was like, damn, what can he do? But what is it that are you an expert in? Which particular martial arts?
Well, the system is called Shinchuan, which I founded. But before that, I had high ranks in things like Hapkido and Kempo and good grief, and I studied judo and I belts in Aikido and so I just kind of was teaching, a bunch of people. But people say, well, what style is this? I said, I don't know. It's just, martial arts. And then people started saying, well, this is pretty interesting. And then I started going to things where I was meeting grandmasters and stuff, and they were going, man, you got something there. This ought to be your thing. And I looked up and I realized I'd been doing it ever since I was 11. And I'm still doing it. I still teach private lessons, and I've been doing it 61 years. But somewhere in there, probably about the 35, 40-year mark, I really started putting together a system. And it's in the United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame. I guess the United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame still exists. I haven't been to one of those things in many years, but it was put in there, and I was inducted into that Hall of Fame for Shinchuan. And so it's really got a little bit of everything. It deals with grappling, it deals with striking, you name it. It even it had a weapon division, which really, sticks, knives, things like that, which I was not that great at. I've got some ability there, but I had other people who were good at that taught that. And we had street boxing, which was somewhat more it was called street boxing because you could do things you couldn't do in normal
Mm.
sparring situations, but it was still closer to something where you could go spar with people and do that. But the other stuff is varied. You know, it's really called Sichuan martial science, but under that umbrella is um, Sichuan family system, which is something that I only teach a few people. And I think it's probably my best iteration of that because over time I've decided what I think's best and what works best. But on the other hand, you never know it all, and whatever you know that isn't necessarily going to work for everybody. Some people just don't, you know, they lean in some direction. Sichuan allows you to kind of find your spot. You know, it has set things, but it doesn't have set ideas. It realizes that not everyone's going to be at this good at this particular aspect, you know. So anyway, I've been doing it a long time. That's the bottom line.
Damn long time.
Yeah.
Was it any particular say quote unquote famous grandmasters or very high trained experienced martial artists that you were proud to have met over the years?
Oh, yeah, Dan Inosanto, but you know, I just met him at a seminar in London, in fact. Um, you know, he's Bruce Lee's main guy. Um, Wally J, who was a great jujitsu guy. I really enjoyed meeting him. There was a guy that nobody might know, Professor Kesare, Professor C, as we called him, amazing martial artist. Some of the best martial artists I ever met, no one knows.
Hmm.
You know, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like because I didn't pursue it as a complete career, but I pursued it as if it were. I studied it really hard. I mean, I got all the wounds and breaks to prove that. But on the other hand, I never had time to say I'm just going to promote this and make this my thing, you know,
Hmm.
because I was also writing and taking care of a family. And sometimes there's a part of me that kind of thinks that might have been something I should have done more of, but not much because that way I still got to do it. I always did it like I was full time. I did it every day most of the time. And then when I didn't do it every day, I was still doing it anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week. And I trained with everybody that I could possibly find. You know, I've trained with some of the best, you know, and sometimes in seminars, sometimes in camp, sometimes I would invite them in. I've trained a lot of people that probably wouldn't admit that they train with me because they're kind of known doing their own thing, you know. Um, there was some Kempo people that I trained with that I admire. Chuck Sullivan, who I admire a lot. He's a very good Kempo man of the original Ed Parker style, and you know, so and there's a lot of people I met. Like it's like naming all these books and writers. I you know I get overwhelmed with how many. So those are the ones that come to the top of my head. You know.
Yeah. This, I think it's well, I don't know if it's me looking at it differently because I know that, probably back in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of action movie stars that did a lot of
Yeah.
martial arts, but there seems to be a lot more um, people of influence, whether it be actors, writers, directors, and everything. They
Mhm.
are taking up a form of martial arts. Do you
Yeah.
agree on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Good.
so. I think a lot of traditional martial arts have been pushed to the side, and Shinchuan is not really a traditional martial art, but you know I think that they're losing a lot though by not studying a variety of arts, and I've noticed that some of the people now in the mixed martial arts that are actually doing better are people that are more broadly trained, you know, and now that a lot of people understand about groundwork, they don't end up having to go to the ground as frequently because they've learned the more you know about something, the more you know how to avoid certain things, or the more you know how to use it if you get into that position.
Mm,
But I think there's a lot of people involved in contest and in film, but I don't know how many true martial artists there are anymore that'll get into something and stay with it all their lives. You
mm,
know, they get fattish. A lot of people like to sit and watch it and think they're masters. It's different as when I was a kid, people didn't kick much. They might do a football kick in defense, but generally it was like fisticuffs. And I remember because I learned to kick back then, and you know, I'm more of a hands person really, but I was a very good kicker when I was young, and people didn't know what to do with that. But then more and more you see it on TV and whatever, more and more people are kicking, even that they didn't train, they had some idea. And then you comes along, you got groundwork like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then more and more people are doing that. And then more and more people are, so there isn't one art better than another. And when people tell you there is, that's ridiculous. Or when people tell you all fights go to the ground, who took that poll? Who took that poll? I unfortunately was in many, and none of them ever went to the ground. And partly that was because I was successful quick.
Mm.
That doesn't mean they couldn't have. And hopefully, I'd been trained in judo and wrestling some, so I had some ground game, and I got more of it as I got older. I studied different kinds of jujitsu and from people, but there isn't one thing that's better than another. It's usually the person behind it. But Shin tries to open up a lot of opportunities, and when I retire, I don't think there'll be more than 2 or 3 people in that system that left, and if they don't do it, it's lost, which is a real shame because it's pretty effective.
Do you plan on retiring as a martial arts instructor then?
Well, I think yeah, I think that life retires you. It's I still do it. I mean, I know people my age that go, "How do you get up off the floor?" Like, because I didn't quit doing it, you
Yeah,
know. But at some point, you do feel the difference, and I have begun to feel the difference.
yeah, yeah. It's
I
like
have young people come in, and then I've worked. They go, "How you doing that?" And I think I don't know, and I
yeah,
think it's probably because I've been doing it all my life, and just something kicks in, and I know how to do it and how to handle them and how all that.
yeah,
But there comes a point when you have to say, I got to let that dog go home.
yeah. Well, it's mental, isn't it? It's like, well, you can keep
Yeah,
going if you keep going and doing what you're doing, what you love
yeah,
best.
yeah.
You're mentally like, well, this is
Right.
it, but then it will take a toll on you physically.
Yeah, eventually you just get to the point to where you can't override that. Age is a fact. Everybody's going to die. Everybody's going to get old. I'm fortunate. I'm 72 and I'm still doing it. So I don't know how much longer because I don't take falls or spar anymore as of just last year,
Mm.
and it reminds me of a friend of mine from Bubba Ho-Tep was the Bob Ivy, who was the stunt man who played the mummy. And I saw him sometime after that, and we were talking, and he told me he had retired from being a stunt man. I said, "What happened, man?" He said, "The ground got hard." I knew exactly what he meant. Yeah.
Speaking of Bubba Ho-Tep, then, how how do you approach it now? Because obviously it got a good following over the years, and
Yeah.
of course, Ozzy Davis and Bruce Campbell were in it, and good following in the horror community and in the film community, etc. So, to this day, how do you look back on Boba Hotep when you wrote it and when it became a film?
I look back on it as Don Coscarelli. He took it and he directed it and he did it great. I think it's a great film, and as years go by, it's become more and more accepted as a real, just not just a B movie, but as a cool sort of offbeat movie. And I think Bruce's performance in that's his best performance of all time, and he's great. And Ossie doesn't do any wrong. He he was one of my favorite actors, and I was excited getting to meet him. Of course, I got to meet Bruce, and we became friends and all that. But Ossie was that guy I'd grown up with, you know, and
Mm,
I had seen him, and also he was very much involved in civil rights and things like that, which I admired him for.
yeah,
And playwright, director, producer,
yeah.
you know, hard to beat all that.
Yeah, I think we know a lot of stories about Bruce Campbell, so I'm not going to ask about Bruce Campbell because he's just everywhere and everyone loves him. But I really want to know about Ozzie Davis because I think he's a tremendous actor that doesn't even I think in today's time, if you knew obviously like because you knew him back then and a lot of
Yeah,
people and fans would know him back when he was alive.
right.
Now, the very first film I ever knew about Ozzie Davis, two actually, were one was a voiceover which was Dinosaur. I was like, what is this voice? And the other one was 12 Angry Men. And then obviously, uh, then I started learning a bit more. So is there a story you could tell about Ozzie Davis as the actor and when you interacted with him?
Yeah, yeah, I got two or three little ones. I remember one day he was preparing to do a scene, and he asked me, although I didn't really, it was Don's screenplay based on my story, but it was very much like what I wrote. It was very close to it. And he said, "I was wondering if I could change this to arsehole." instead of asshole. I said, man, you do anything you want. Just, as long as Don, you're cool, I'm cool. And so he does say that in the film also. And another thing that he was interesting is that he would sit on the bench. Sometimes Bruce is sitting here and he's sitting like this and he would just sleep like that. Then they go, Ossie, he's awake, get up and do it, just like it needed to be done, And I remember too that the first time Don showed me a clip, a kind of piece of a daily, I watched it. And before I'd watched it, I'd watched them do that very scene. And I thought, Bruce is really blowing Ossie out of the water. I can't believe this. And then when I saw the clip, Bruce was great, but Ossie knew exactly how much to give, and you realize on screen, he popped just right because he knew. And then one other was I was in Italy. My wife and I were over there because I was at a book festival, and my daughter's a singer and musician. She was performing in Italy, and there was another guy performing there. His name was Guy Davis, and I had on my Bubba Ho-Tep shirt, and he went, "I loved my dad in that," and I went, "What?" And he said, "That's my dad." And so he was a blues jazz guitarist, and he was performing as well. And he said, "Let's get a picture for Mama," and he got a picture with me. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Really,
It's
so I
things,
love my.
yeah, it's things like that. It's little things like that that just make it so worth
Mm.
it.
Yeah, I have had people come to me not just once, but multiple times and say to me, "Your books saved my life." And I go,
Mm,
"How's that?" He said, I was so miserable. I felt suicidal. And I started reading your books and it changed. Or my dad was ill and I was able to, escape that, or my mother, whatever. Or my dad, I gave him these books and it just changed things for him. He was so excited and he's now read 20 of them or whatever. And I can't tell you how many people have told me that. And when that happens, that power of storytelling, the power of storytelling,
mm,
and that ability to tap into something that is, again, subconscious and that other people have experienced in their dreams, if not in their life, or both.
yeah.
So to me, that's the greatest thing I've got. I can't tell you how many letters I've got, or that my parent, whatever, they're when they were dying, they were reading your books. That was the only thing that gave them joy. And
Mm.
so yeah, it means a lot, it means a lot.
When it came to, because you've had a couple of a few films that were
Right.
adaptations of your books. There was an interview, I think it was talking with authors or something like that. I can't remember. But do you have mixed emotions when it comes to your work being made into films? Because there is particular characters that are completely, you have a full image in your head, but they are not the same when they're on screen.
Um, I have mixed emotions, sure, but I think I've been pretty happy with 99% of everything in mine that's been filmed.
Mm,
Even the animated adaptations of my work for Love, Death, and Robots, I liked all of it. I wrote scripts for Batman the Animated Series, and they played them pretty much like I wrote them. So I felt pretty happy with that. Hap and Leonard, I think they captured those guys pretty well. They used maybe two-thirds of the plots. I have like beefs about this and that, little things, but overall, I've been treated extremely well. There's a
mm.
new one coming out, and I don't have any opinion on it because I haven't seen it, called The Thicket, which comes out with Peter Dinklage and Juliette Lewis, sometime soon. I don't know exactly when, but
Well, you have a new book because you have Collins and Leonard Price. Those
yeah,
you've done a run of series of books about them. You got a new one coming out called Sugar on the Bones.
right.
Um, Tell us about it.
Well, Sugar on the Bones would be number 13 in the Hap and Leonard. It just got a tremendous review, and people saying that especially for one this far in a series, that it, knocked it out of the park. And unfortunately, I've got several reviews like that over the years for Hap and Leonard. Um, I, I guess you would say it's one of those things that happens in some of my books, is that where someone comes to them to say, "Hey, there's a missing person or something, and they start to look into it, and the whole thing turns out to be about far more than that. And this one is complex, sort of, I guess, murder for insurance that becomes more complex than that, deals a little bit with organ theft. And all of it, strangely enough, is based on reality. As strange as it is, a lot of times people say, well, that couldn't be real. Yeah, that's based on reality. Well, this part's real. No, I made that part up. So it's the usual potpourri of things that happen to them. But this time there's some of the characters are going to change dramatically. Some may not survive. And I think that it's probably the best one I've done in about, well, since it's 13, it's probably the best one I've done in a few years, of Hap and Leonard for sure. Although I'm proud of all of them.
Yeah.
There's not one I don't like. There's some I like better.
Would you say do you know how some authors, they always criticize their own books and, oh, I wish I could have done this better, or I wish I could have done that, or I wish I could have changed there. Would you say you're like that? Would you say you're your own worst critic, or you're just happy
Yeah,
what you've done?
my worst critic. There's a part of me that like another crack at all of them, but there's also another part of me that knows I can't be that person I was when I was writing that one. And a lot of times, what you think needs to come out ends up, sort of eviscerating the whole thing, and because there's some sort of passion that when in writing, when you're really into it, that passion goes into that story, and people can interpret that. And I guess it's the way you arrange the words or how the pacing is. But I've always felt that that was like one of my advantages, that I was able to put my passion for these stories into the work. But, it's people's mileage varies.
Of all the books you've written, being a martial artist instructor, of all the things you've done, if you were to walk down the road now and someone came up and went, Joe Lansdale, what would be the first thing that people would recognize you for? Would it be the horror novels, the westerns, a bit of everything? What would it be?
It'd probably be Hap and Leonard. And then after that, it would probably be The Bottoms,
Mm,
which is my most famous novel, an Edgar winning novel. Um, but I actually have that happen all the time. And there's so many different answers, but Hap and Leonard is the main one.
mm,
And I've written, I think the Hap and Leonard books have an overall quality, but I've written individual books that I think individually might be better. And people will rave about it. And at the very end of it, they always go, when's the next Hap and Leonard? And I guess it's like Sherlock Holmes. With Doyle wrote Sherlock Holmes, and well, the only difference is I love my guys. I love writing about them. I love them, and they've given me a great life. My daughter once said that growing up with me writing those books, she said it's hard to not think of them as real people and like they're her uncles or something.
yeah.
And yeah, that's good. That's good. The Thicket gets a lot of attention, and my favorite book of all my work is Paradise Sky. So,
Mm. As someone who's, again, written a lot, did you ever, what is the, if you can tell a story about a particular famous individual that approached you and loved your work, or have you got any stories of any
like that's
interactions you
that's
have?
happened a lot and surprised me. Um, gosh, well, this isn't so much one that loved my work, but it was such a surprise. I wrote many years ago. I wrote either a forward or an after to Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes for a special edition. And I was on a book tour out in California, and my friend Lee Langford, who was also driving me around, said, Bradbury's signing right down the street. I said, I've never met Ray Bradbury. I'm such a big fan. So we went, the story was called Mystery and Imagination. It's closed now. But we went over there, and he was in a wheelchair. He'd had a stroke. And when I came in, he went, Joe. And the hell's he talking to? And it was me. And he wanted to take us to lunch, took us to lunch, one of the greatest lunches I ever had. Listened to him talk for a couple of hours or more. And he talked about Rod Serling. He talked about his influence on the Twilight Zone. And he didn't like Rod much. And he talked about a variety of so many things. And George Clayton Johnson was with him, who also wrote a number of the Twilight Zone stories. And I think Dennis Etchison might have been there, and I forget, but we just listened to Ray talk. So that wasn't exactly him saying, "Gee, I'm a great fan of your work," but he knew who I was, which surprised me because I had no idea that he did. And I met Richard Matheson through my friend R.C. Matheson, his son, and that was a big point. Robert Bloch, I love Bob Bloch. And so, he wrote Psycho and all those things, and he was one of the funniest men. I can't say we were buddies. We were more like associates in some ways, but we were becoming better friends. And I wish that he had lived longer because I think we were there. Same thing with Roger Zelazny, who really liked my work. He was very, very kind. And there were others that, it made me feel really happy. William F. Nolan, who wrote Logan's Run, he and I became great friends, and he was a fan of my work, and I was a fan of his. Philip Jose Farmer, my favorite science fiction writer of all time, was a fan of my work as I was of his. And to meet him, I said, "You don't know who I am, but I just want to tell you how much your work means." So he said, "Of course I know who you are." And then he started listing off stories and books. That's pretty cool. It never occurred to me, that any of these, gods of writing were aware of me at all. So
Yeah.
that was.
I wouldn't know how to respond if some famous playwright or writer came up to say, "Oh, I love your work." I'd be just sat there going, "Why?"
Yeah. I remember one time just sitting on a curb with Sam Shepard, and we're talking about water moccasins, and some stuff like that, just all stuff like that. When we talked, except for that fact that we were in that, we never talked about writing. We talked about other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's the stuff that makes writing. I think that's what we were more interested in. I think that's what he was more interested in. I know I was too, but I didn't get to know Sam real well. He was a kind of a loner a little bit. He was mostly a quiet man. There's one little story I remember when they were filming Cold in July. They had a scene that was kind of upstairs, and the guy comes out of the nowhere and stabs Jim Bob in the back. And Mike Hall is there, too. And so they're arguing, not Mike, but Don with the director, Jim Mickle, that he thinks it should be here and whatever. And it just goes on and on and on. And after a little while, Mike put this gun under his chin like he was, I've had enough, But then Sam went outside, he just left. So after a little bit, I went outside and I said, "Are you okay, Sam?" He said, "Too many cooks." That was it. I mean, but I just thought that was really funny, too many cooks.
Last question for you then, Joe. And I think that's your pitbull in the background.
Yeah, that's my dog, Ruru.
Yeah. Last question for you, Joe. And I really appreciate you taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Last question for you is, how do you look back on your career?
Happy. I did what I wanted to do. I became what I wanted to be. And, bestsellerdom, that would have been great, but not at the cost of not doing what I wanted to do. Because, and understand, I think there are great bestsellers. I'm not dissing that. I'm just saying that in general, I don't think because people always thought I was going to be one. And everybody always thought I was going to, but what happened is I became well known enough. People recognize me sometimes, and I'm shocked. I'll be in Italy, people know me on the street because I'm so popular there as a writer. But I've got enough of that, and I'm pretty well off. I've made quite a bit of money from books because most of my books are still in print, and I've had films, and I've had comics, and I've TV shows, and it's still going on. I've got stuff still rolling, and I got to do comics, which I wanted to do. I got to do short stories and novels, plays. I've even got a couple of musicals that are hanging fire that may happen. And to me, I've just had the best time in the world. I've written poetry, and I'm not even a big fan of poetry. And I had a book that was up for an award of poetry. And I said, well, you can call it that, I guess. But I've done what I wanted. So I look back on my career, and probably because also my family were well taken care of. I was able to do that. My wife and I managed that. My wife is my hero for sure. for helping me adjust and know how to do this, and always being there. Never a negative word at all about writing. She might not like the way I did the toothpaste tube, but the other was great. So I don't know, good family, good career, martial arts career that I'm proud of. Even if it, goes disappears with me, everything disappears with you if it's you disappearing. So I'm very content. Yeah.
Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalized keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewelry, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF62 7EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewelry Workshops. Vale Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware, including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valegewelryworkshops.co.uk, or even phone them at 07789 794248.